My first ever solo backpacking trip starts at the Salmon Lasac trailhead just north of Cle Elum Lake in Washington and ends approximately 13 miles away with an elevation gain of about 2,800 feet at Spade Lake. Mid-September is when I set out, and if you want the TLDR short version, you can skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. Anyways, this was one of the hardest hikes I've ever done. I'd consider myself an average hiker, but I don't go out every weekend, and I'm not too out of shape either. I would rate this a 6.5 out of 10 for difficulty. I had to put a lot of thought into this rating. On the one hand, this hike is often done in 2 days. The first day is the hike out to Waptus Lake, about 11 miles away. After stopping for the night to rest, you can attempt the very steep climb to Spade Lake. Venus Lake isn't too much further up the mountain, and many people visit both, but I just did the one, and I did it in 1 day. The hike to Waptus wasn't too hard. Rolling hills for miles, the ground can be very rocky and dusty at times, and there's a lot of horse poop on the ground. The scenery isn't great on this section of the trip. It's all forest. You spend a lot of time looking at trees. And if you're not looking at trees, you're squeezing your way through pockets of dense brush.
I wonder if those horses came down this way. I wonder how the heck, they're so wide, how the heck did they get through this thing? Oh my gosh.
If you're lucky, then somebody will have already come through to wipe off all the spider webs. Unfortunately, I wasn't so lucky, and I felt a ton of webs on me. I hate spiders, but I tried not to think about it. The scenery here isn't great. Honestly, I'd rate it a 3 out of 10 for this portion.
Look, it's even got seat cushions. Or, well, not very cushiony, but it's got seat rocks. It's pretty cool. Check out this area. It's got a little waterfall over there. A little campfire. And a sitting bench. Rest my feet. This would have made a good place to stretch.
A couple miles in, you'll meet up with the Waptus River and follow it for pretty much the remainder of the hike to Waptus Lake. There are plenty of opportunities for filtering water down here. On this trail, I encountered quite the variety of people, including trail runners, hikers, backpackers, horses, fishermen, and hunters, both young and old. So this part is pretty friendly for most people. This portion of the hike, I'd rate a 3 for difficulty, maybe 3.5 out of 10 because of the length almost being 11 miles. Which, by the way, I'm getting these lengths and elevations from a combination of Washington Trail Associations and All Trails. As I close in on Waptus, I kept following signs that said Waptus River Trail, and that led me to the south side of the lake. I knew something was wrong because I knew I was supposed to eventually cross over to the north side of the lake, but I kept following the trail. Eventually, I reached a spot that said Waptus Campsites, and I lost the trail.
Okay, not good. So, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to be on the other side of the lake right now. I'm not sure when I missed the river crossing, so I'm going to backtrack until I reach one of the forks in the road that I passed, and I'm going to go the other way. Because yeah, I should have crossed the river at some point.
I backtracked to a fork and found a sign that said Waptus Horse Ford, and it clicked right then and there that the horse ford was the river crossing. So don't make my mistake and follow the sign that says Horse Ford, leading you to the right. Shortly after that, I reached the crossing. I wasn't looking forward to get my feet wet, but I rolled up my pants and took my shoes off, replaced them with some flip-flops, and hopped right in.
It's gonna be cold. I'm not gonna enjoy this. It's cold. Jesus Christ. That's cold. Oh God. Woo! It feels nice though. Actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. It's actually quite refreshing. Look at the other side. That's what it looks like over there. And yeah, my feet are to my calf now. Oh, my pants are about to fall. Hold on.
Not even a mile after that, I reached the lake campsites. It was about 12:30 and I was behind schedule. I quickly sat down on the lakefront and started to boil water for my mountain house meal. It was quiet, I was all alone, and the view was amazing. Too bad I didn't have enough time to enjoy because of my time crunch.
And that's what I'm eating. But that's my view. Very pretty. Beautiful.
I got back on the trail, and just up ahead was the fork leading to Spade Lake. Now, I've done some research beforehand, and everybody says this is the hardest part of the trail. It's not very long, at about 3 miles, but the ascent is steep, with an elevation gain of about 2,000 feet. Now, I've climbed some steep mountains before, so I thought I'd fare pretty well. Those hopes were quickly dashed about half a mile in. I was panting and dying from the climb already. I don't usually bring trekking poles with me, but they were a lifesaver this time. My strategy for going up was basically keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually I had reached the top. I'd rate the scenery on this portion a solid 7 out of 10. Great mountain view with openings that peer down onto the increasingly small Waptus Lake. You can also see the mountainsides opposite of you. A truly great view as long as you ignore the pain from your legs. At this point, I was basically leaning on my poles, half using my legs and half using my arms to pull myself up. Maybe I'm a little more out of shape than I thought. Contrary to what I've read, this climb isn't actually all uphill. Towards the last mile, the grade actually starts to level out and even dip down at some points. A welcome change of pace. Finally, I reach my destination, but not before seeing the local wildlife.
Yo. The freaking bear. That's crazy. There he goes. Goodbye, buddy. Looks like a brown bear. He don't look too black. He looks brown. Well, that's kind of scary knowing he's there. Oh well. There it is. That is Spade Lake. Look at that beauty. We're almost there. It is in sight. And there is a bear somewhere around here, so I'm gonna try and keep talking, keeping my eye out for it. I do have my spray ready in hand. There's a freaking lot of flies everywhere. Finally made it. Sitting here on the water's edge. I even saw a freaking bear. I don't see anybody else. Usually people take one day to go to Waptus, and then they take the next day to go up to Spade. I saw 3 hikers come down, well, 3 groups. I'm assuming they came from up here, because it was Spade Lake Trail. I don't see anybody else. Nobody's out on the water, at least. Started at 7:53 and then got here at 5:15. That took me a while. Dang near 10 hours. I'm gonna go set up camp. I'm gonna find a good camp spot. I'll probably head out that way. See if I can find a good camp spot. Or maybe I'll head out that way. Maybe I'll head out that way to be closer to Venus Lake. Yeah, hopefully I don't run into that bear. And here's home for the next like 12 hours. Maybe not that long.
After setting up camp, I sat along the lake and ate some freeze-dried food, just relaxing. Afterwards, I set all the food and other smelly items inside my bear bag and tied it up a good distance away from camp. Not gonna lie, I was extremely paranoid about bears since I saw one not more than 500 meters away from my site. Well, maybe it was a little farther than that, but I finally settled down and went to bed. I had a terrible night's sleep. My sleeping pad was horrible, but we'll save that for another video. And the wind was blowing pretty hard a few times throughout the night, and every rustling leaf kept me up at night. In the end, I didn't get too much sleep, and in the morning, I quickly packed up and headed back down the mountain once more. The trek down was much easier, but the distance was still long enough to take a very long time to get back, just about 6 hours. All in all, here's the TLDR for the trip. From Salmon-Lasac trailhead to Spade Lake, it took me about 8.5 hours of hiking, plus another 30 or so minutes to eat lunch. That split up between 4.5 hours from the trailhead to Waptus and 4 hours from Waptus to Spade Lake. Let me put that into perspective. It took me almost the same amount of time to go the 3 miles to Spade Lake as it did the 11 miles to Waptus Lake. Now, there are a few things you should be aware of, such as bears, other wildlife like squirrels dropping nuts on your head. There were actually quite a few of those. Following the wrong signs, and the river crossing. I highly recommend you bring water crossing footwear, trekking poles, and bear spray. For difficulty, this trail gets a 6.5 out of 10. First section to Waptus is pretty easy, albeit long. The last section to Spade Lake is freaking hard, especially if you do both in one day. Scenery is pretty boring for the first section, not gonna lie, very monotonous. Though it gets a lot better with the traditional mountain views as you ascend the final 3 miles. Scenery gets a 5 out of 10. As for being fun, honestly, I had a lot more fun on other hikes than I did this one. It didn't stand out to me as being a great hike. 4 out of 10. Personally, I wouldn't do this again. I feel like unless I went to these lakes to do something like to swim or fish, it isn't worth it. Anyways, those are my thoughts and my adventures on my very first backpacking trip. I hope you enjoyed the video.